My name is Eleanor Kessler. I am 67 years old, and on the morning I almost died, I was getting ready to sign my company over to my son. I had built Kessler Manufacturing with my own hands after my husband passed away 18 years ago. For nearly 2 decades, I carried the weight of that company on my shoulders, believing that one day it would be safe in my family's hands. I was wrong about family. I was wrong about safety. I was wrong about everything except one thing: the quiet woman who had been watching from the shadows and waiting for her moment to save my life. That Tuesday morning, my son David arrived early. He looked calm, focused, almost relieved. His wife Christine followed shortly after, polished and composed in her cream-colored blouse and designer pearls, carrying a tray with 3 cups of coffee from that new artisan cafe downtown. She handed one to me with a soft smile. "Your favorite, Eleanor. Colombian dark roast with a splash of oat milk." I thanked her and set the cup on my desk. The papers were already spread out, marked with yellow tabs where I needed to sign. David had prepared everything meticulously. He always did. At that exact moment, Rosa Delgado stepped into the room. Rosa had worked in my home for 16 years. She knew my routines better than I knew them myself. She knew how I liked my coffee, how I folded my napkins, when something was wrong even before I did. She was supposed to be invisible, the help, the hired woman who cleaned and cooked and kept everything running. But Rosa saw everything. As she moved past me with a stack of fresh towels, she stumbled. The coffee spilled across my lap and onto the Persian carpet. Before anyone could react, Rosa leaned close and whispered in a voice I barely recognized, strained and urgent, "Do not drink it. Please. Trust me." My heart skipped, but my face stayed calm. I nodded slightly, as if accepting an apology for the mess. No one noticed when I switched cups with the one David had brought for himself, still sitting untouched on the side table. We sat down. Papers were placed in front of me, documents meant to transfer control of my company. David talked about the future, about responsibility, about how tired I must be after all these years of carrying the burden alone. "You've done enough, Mom," he said, his voice warm and persuasive. "It's time to rest. Let me handle things now." I lifted the coffee cup and took a small sip. It tasted wrong, bitter beneath the roast, with a sharp chemical edge that no amount of oat milk could mask. 5 minutes later, Christine stopped talking mid-sentence. Her hands began to shake, her face drained of color. She tried to stand and collapsed onto the floor, her body convulsing against the Persian carpet that had cost more than most cars. Chaos filled the room. David shouted her name. Rosa froze near the doorway. I stayed seated, my hands steady, my mind racing, because in that moment, as I watched my daughter-in-law convulsing on the floor, I understood something terrifying. That coffee was never meant for her. It was meant for me. And the only reason I was still breathing was because Rosa Delgado had risked everything to save a life that no one else seemed to value. To understand why that morning mattered so much, you need to understand the life I had lived before it. 18 years ago, my husband Robert died suddenly from a heart attack. One moment I was a wife planning retirement trips to Italy and grandchildren birthday parties. The next I was a widow standing in a boardroom full of men who assumed the company would be sold within months. Kessler Manufacturing was small back then, modest contracts, tight margins, no room for error. We made precision components for aerospace companies, the kind of specialized work that required expertise built over decades. Everyone expected me to sell. Everyone expected me to grieve politely and then disappear into widowhood. I didn't. I stayed. I learned every department, every client, every weakness in the business. I worked nights, weekends, holidays, not because I loved power, but because I believed responsibility didn't disappear when life became inconvenient. David was 25 when his father died, a young man with an MBA and more ambition than experience. I tried to shield him from pressure, telling myself he would step up when he was ready. I wanted him to have time to grow, to learn, to make mistakes in private before taking the reins in public. Instead, time hardened him. As the company grew from 12 million to 90 million in annual revenue, so did his impatience. He saw success as something owed to him, not earned. He spoke about leadership before he understood sacrifice. He married Christine 4 years ago. She was beautiful, polished, the daughter of a family with old money and new ambitions. From the beginning, I sensed something cold behind her smile, but I dismissed it as the adjustment period of a new daughter-in-law. I was too generous with doubt and too blind to danger. Through all of it, Rosa Delgado was there. She arrived in my life quietly, recommended by a friend, and never left. She cleaned, she cooked, she listened, she noticed things no one else did. When David began staying late at the office, Rosa noticed. When Christine started arriving early on days I had important meetings, Rosa noticed. When I began feeling dizzy some mornings, brushing it off as stress, Rosa noticed. I did not. I trusted my family. I trusted my son. I believed love meant safety. Looking back now, I see the warning signs clearly. The subtle shifts. The way conversation stopped when I entered a room. The way Christine watched me, not with affection, but with calculation. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. That is what trust does. It makes you generous with doubt and blind to danger. By the time I sat in that chair on Tuesday morning, papers waiting for my signature, I believed I was preparing for retirement. In truth, I was preparing to disappear. And the only person in that house who understood what was coming was the woman who had nothing to gain by saving me, Rosa. The ambulance ride felt endless. I sat beside David in the emergency waiting room, watching doctors move quickly behind closed doors. Christine had been taken straight in, no questions, no delays. David paced. He rubbed his hands together. He spoke to nurses. He made calls. He never once asked how I was feeling. After nearly 2 hours, a doctor emerged, her face carefully neutral. Christine had been poisoned. The substance hadn't been identified yet, but the symptoms were clear. This wasn't an allergic reaction, not food poisoning, not stress. This was deliberate poisoning with a substance designed to stop the heart. The word landed heavy in my chest, but not as heavy as the realization that followed. The doctor asked what Christine had eaten or drunk that morning. David answered quickly. Smooth, rehearsed. Coffee, brought from that new cafe downtown. We all had some. That was not true. I had barely taken a sip. I watched David as he spoke. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stumble over his words. He told a story he had already prepared. When the doctor mentioned involving the police, David nodded too quickly, agreed too easily. Of course, whatever is necessary. As soon as she walked away, David turned to me. His face was pale, but his voice was controlled. We should have the house cleaned before investigators get there. It was a mess this morning. Rosa knocked over coffee. The carpet probably needs attention. That was the moment my suspicion turned into certainty. Innocent people protect lives. Guilty people protect scenes. I told him no. I said the house should be left exactly as it was. His jaw tightened for just a second before he masked it. Why would you say that? Because someone tried to kill your wife, I replied, keeping my voice steady. And maybe they weren't aiming at her. David stared at me, searching my face, measuring how much I knew. That night, when I stepped outside the hospital for air, I made a call of my own. Rosa answered on the first ring. She didn't ask how Christine was. She asked if I was safe, and that told me everything I needed to know. Rosa asked me to meet her away from the house, not at the hospital, somewhere public, somewhere safe. When I saw her sitting alone at a small diner on the edge of town, I barely recognized the woman who had worked quietly in my home for 16 years. Her hands were steady, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had been holding a secret for too long. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. She told me she had been watching Christine for months. At first it was small things. Christine arriving early on mornings when I had important meetings. Christine insisting on preparing my coffee herself. Christine sending Rosa out of the room with unnecessary errands. Then my health began to change. I complained of dizziness, fatigue, nausea. I blamed stress, age, the weight of responsibility. Rosa did not. She began documenting. Dates, times, symptoms, patterns, everything recorded in a small notebook she kept hidden in her car. One morning she pretended to be cleaning the kitchen while watching through the reflection in the window glass. That was when she saw it. Christine removed a small vial from her purse and tipped drops into my coffee. Rosa didn't confront her. She didn't tell anyone. She knew no one would believe a housekeeper accusing the company heir's wife. She knew how these things worked. The poor woman against the rich family, the immigrant against the citizens. the hired help against the people who held power. Instead, she documented everything. She showed me photographs she had taken with her phone. Christine near my cup, Christine stirring slowly, Christine checking her watch afterward as if counting down to something. She told me she had overheard conversations between Christine and David, quiet ones, careful ones, conversations about my will, about insurance, about how long it would take before I stopped asking questions. David knew. He wasn't being manipulated by his wife. He was participating. They were partners in this. Money had already been moved from company accounts into private ones. Life insurance policies had been taken out in my name without my knowledge. Legal documents had been prepared that would give David immediate control of everything upon my death. They weren't waiting for me to retire. They were waiting for me to die. That morning, Rosa had seen Christine add more poison than usual. Enough to finish it. Enough to make my death look like a sudden heart attack, the same way Robert had died 18 years ago. She panicked. She did the only thing she could think of. She spilled the coffee. She warned me. And when Christine drank from the wrong cup, the entire plan collapsed in on itself. Rosa looked at me then, tears finally breaking through her control. "I could not let them kill you, Mrs. Kessler. Not after everything you have done for me. Not after everything you have built." In that moment, I understood the full truth. The woman who owed me nothing had risked everything to save my life, and the son I trusted with everything had been ready to watch me die. I didn't cry when I heard the truth. Something inside me hardened instead. This was no longer about betrayal. This was about survival. Rosa had more than observations. She had evidence. Over the months of watching and waiting, she had been quietly building a case that any prosecutor would envy. She had recordings. Her phone, left on counters and in hallways, had captured fragments of conversations never meant for anyone to hear. David talking about timing, Christine talking about dosage, both of them discussing me as if I were already gone. One recording stayed with me more than the rest. David's voice, casual and cold. "It'll be easier once she stops signing things." Christine's reply, equally detached. "It won't take much longer. Another week, maybe 2. They were calm, casual, intimate, like 2 people planning a vacation, not a murder. Rosa watched me as I listened, ready to catch me if I fell apart. I didn't. This was not about revenge. It was about justice. The next morning, I contacted my attorney. Not the family attorney David had cultivated for years, but a woman I had known since before Robert's death. Someone I trusted completely. We met in her office with Rosa present. The recordings were played, the photographs were examined, the documentation was reviewed. By the end of that meeting, criminal charges were being prepared. 2 days later, David was arrested at the company headquarters. The police came during a board meeting, in front of every executive and investor who had ever questioned whether a woman could run a manufacturing company. They let him out in handcuffs while I watched from my office window. Christine was arrested at home. She tried to run when she saw the officers approaching, which didn't exactly help her claim of innocence. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Rosa testified with the quiet dignity of someone who had spent a lifetime being overlooked and had finally been given the chance to speak. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, theft. David received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Christine received the same. When the judge read the sentences, David finally looked at me. There was no apology in his eyes, no regret, only anger that he had failed. I felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that the truth had finally caught up with him. Justice is not a feeling. It is a result, and the cost of greed is always higher than people expect. The aftermath was not what anyone expected. I didn't sell the company. I didn't retreat into grief or disappear into widow's black. Instead, I came back stronger. Within a year of the trial, Kessler Manufacturing had expanded into 3 new markets. Revenue doubled. We hired 100 new employees. The board that had once whispered about whether a woman could lead now spoke about my tenure as legendary. Rosa Delgado did not remain my housekeeper. I promoted her to Director of Household Operations, a title I invented specifically because she deserved more than anyone I had ever employed. She manages a staff of 8 now. She has a corner office in the guest house. She makes more money than my former CFO. When reporters ask me about her role in saving my life, I am always clear. Rosa Delgado is not my employee. She is my family, the only family I have left. I created a foundation in her honor, dedicated to supporting domestic workers who face exploitation and abuse. The Delgado Foundation provides legal assistance, education grants, and emergency housing for women who have no one else to turn to. Last year, we helped over 200 families. Rosa attends every fundraiser. She speaks about her experience with a dignity that leaves audiences in tears. She has become a symbol of something I never expected, the power of loyalty over blood. As for David and Christine, I do not visit them in prison. I do not write letters. I do not acknowledge their existence. They chose money over morality. They chose inheritance over love. They chose murder over patience. They can live with those choices in their cells. I will live with mine in the company I built, surrounded by people who earned their place at my table. If there is one lesson my story leaves behind, it is this: never ignore the small warnings, never dismiss the people who see what you are too close to notice, and never assume that kindness makes you weak. Kindness kept Rosa in my house for 16 years. Kindness made her watch and wait and document. Kindness made her spill that coffee at exactly the right moment. Kindness saved my life, and strength made sure the people who tried to take it paid the price. I am 68 years old now. I run a $100 million company. I have survived grief, betrayal, and attempted murder, and I am just getting started. They thought I was an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved, a line item in their inheritance calculation. What they didn't know, what no one knows until they make the mistake of underestimating the quiet ones, is that the people who build things are rarely the people who burn them. I built Kessler Manufacturing from nothing. I built it through widowhood and recession and doubt. I built it while raising a son who would one day try to kill me for it. And I am still building. The company will continue long after I am gone. Not in David's hands, not in the hands of anyone who sees it as an asset to be stripped, but in the hands of people who understand what it means to create something that lasts. My will has been updated. The company will be held in trust, governed by a board I personally selected, people with integrity and vision. A portion of all profits will fund the Delgado Foundation forever. Rosa will be taken care of for the rest of her life and beyond. Her children, who I have watched grow up from a distance, will receive scholarships. Her grandchildren will never know the fear of poverty. That is my legacy. Not the money, not the company, not the revenge. The legacy is simple. When someone saves your life, you save theirs back. When someone proves their loyalty, you prove yours tenfold. Rosa Delgado saw me when no one else did. She protected me when my own blood wanted me dead. She spoke the truth when silence would have been easier, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure she knows what that meant. Some people ask me if I regret trusting David, if I wish I had seen the signs earlier, if I blame myself for not knowing what my own son had become. I don't. I trusted because trust is how humans survive. I loved because love is what gives life meaning. I believed in family because that is what families are supposed to be. David betrayed that trust. He corrupted that love. He destroyed the meaning of family with his greed and his calculation. But I didn't fail. He failed. And I will not spend my remaining years in regret for his failures. I will spend them in gratitude. For Rosa, for justice, for the chance to keep building what he tried to tear down. The morning I almost died, I was getting ready to sign my company over to my son. Instead, I discovered that my son wanted me dead, and I discovered that the woman who cleaned my house was worth more than all the blood relatives I had ever known. Some families are born, some families are chosen. I know which one saved my life, and I know which one I choose now. Rosa Delgado sits across from me at breakfast every morning. We drink coffee together, the good kind, brewed in my kitchen by hands I trust completely. We talk about the foundation, about the company, about the weather and the news and the small pleasures of getting older in a world that doesn't always value age. We don't talk about David. There is nothing left to say, but sometimes when the morning light hits Rosa's face just right, I see the woman who saved me, the woman who noticed what no one else noticed, the woman who risked everything for someone who could not protect herself. And I am grateful, not just for my life, not just for my company, not just for justice. I am grateful for the reminder that goodness exists, that loyalty is real, that some people, however few, will stand in front of danger when they have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Rosa Delgado is that person, and every day I have left on this earth will be a testament to what she did. My name is Eleanor Kessler. I am 68 years old. I run a company I built with my own hands, and I am alive because someone chose to see me when everyone else looked away. That is my story. That is my revenge. Not against David and Christine, though they are paying for their crimes. My revenge is simpler than that. My revenge is living. My revenge is thriving. My revenge is waking up every morning in a house full of people who care about each other. My revenge is proving that you cannot kill what you do not understand, and they never understood me at all. But Rosa did, and that made all the difference. The last time I saw David was through the courtroom glass. He was being led away in chains, his expensive suit replaced by prison orange, his confident posture collapsed into something small and broken. He tried to meet my eyes. I looked away, not because I was weak, not because I couldn't face him, because he was no longer worth my attention. The son I raised died somewhere along the way, replaced by a stranger who saw money where he should have seen love, opportunity where he should have seen family. I mourned that son years ago, before I even knew what he had become. I mourned him in the small disappointments, the forgotten birthdays, the conversations that never happened. By the time he tried to kill me, there was nothing left to mourn, only justice to pursue. And pursue it I did. Now I sit in my office, looking out over the factory floor where precision components are manufactured by people who take pride in their work. The company my husband and I built from nothing. The company I protected through grief and betrayal and attempted murder. It is still standing, and so am I. Some people think revenge is about destruction, about tearing down the people who hurt you. But true revenge is about survival, about building something so strong that no one can ever take it from you, about surrounding yourself with people who see your value, not your vulnerability. Rosa Delgado saw me when my own son did not, and now she sits beside me at every board meeting, every foundation event, every public appearance, not as my employee, as my family, the family I chose, the family that chose me, and that, more than any prison sentence, more than any court verdict, more than any headline or scandal or public shame, is my revenge. Living well, with the people who deserve to be here, while the ones who tried to destroy me rot in cells of their own making. My name is Eleanor Kessler. I am 68 years old. I almost died on a Tuesday morning, and I have never felt more alive.